Yeah, people want to have something to say, but he ain't here with his kids. He ain't helping. He left at 6:00. He left at 6:06 to go be with his mama. To question everybody's loyalty, but where is his loyalty at? But he want to talk about me when I am not doing.
He can't even come here and cook for these kids.
He can't even come here and cook for the kids.
He got to be at work at 8 o'clock.
Nah, matter of fact, he got to be at work at 9.
Okay, well, he still got time to cook for these kids.
And then he pick up his brother-in-law, take him to work back and forth every day.
I ain't got nothing to
But
do
then,
nobody, helping nobody,
but he can't put gas in both cars. Trying to get ready for work. Look at him. This is a sad case, y'all. He getting his stuff. Look at that. Sad case as a father.
Okay, Jeremy, what is the conversation you want to have?
We good.
Yeah. What's the conversation?
Keep your hands on. Don't touch me, bro.
What's the conversation?
Move, bro. I'm trying to get ready for work, man. Go on.
How you getting ready for work?
What is going on? That's all
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm over here doing. Talking about I don't do nothing for the kids. I don't do nothing. I do what I can when I can.
understand.
But like I said, don't keep putting me in situations that's not my problem. And then, like I said, this is your family. You supposed to be here helping take care of
He ain't
these
straight.
kids.
He want
No, you're not good because you're not here taking care of these kids.
He wanna go call everybody.
Keep your hands on me, bro. Don't touch me again.
Touch you.
Jason, sit there over here. We'll make it easy. Sit there over here.
You need to stop.
Sit there over here, Jason.
Ain't nobody coming over here.
Oh, me, bro. Sit down. Get your motherfucking hands on me, bro. Stop touching me, bro.
Stop.
Stop touching me.
I'm gonna kill you. Murder scene,
Don't
murder.
touch me again.
Stop.
Let go. Touch me. Touch me again. Touch me a motherfucking again. Touch me again.
And then everything in the top belong to me. Stop.
Get somewhere and sit down. Y'all gonna have to stop all this. Then y'all wonder why the kids.
March 25th, 2023, Columbus, Mississippi. The sun rises over modest apartment buildings on Green Tree Drive, casting long shadows across parking spaces filled with cars whose owners are still dreaming. It's a Saturday, a day that should be marked by leisure, by the slow unwinding that weekend mornings promise. Inside one apartment, though, tension has already replaced sleep. An argument echoes against thin walls. Words sharpen into weapons. And then, without warning, a moment of violence transforms into something unprecedented. A death broadcast in real time across social media for thousands to witness. What began as a domestic dispute would soon become a tragedy viewed by countless strangers. A private collapse made horrifyingly public. Those who clicked on the Facebook Live that morning saw only the climax. The heated words, the single gunshot, the aftermath. But before that fatal moment was a story years in the making. A story about Jeremy Brown, about Khadijah Michelle Brown, about love that had once been genuine, about dreams shared and promises made, about a relationship that deteriorated in ways neither visible nor simple. This wasn't a random act of violence between strangers. This was the final chapter in a relationship that had traveled from middle school hallways to marriage, from affection to accusation, from partnership to something far more complicated. Something had changed between them. Something had broken. And understanding what happened that March morning means understanding everything that came before. The warning signs, the patterns, the pressures building day by day, year by year, until finally, tragically, there was no turning back. This isn't merely an account of how Jeremy Brown died. It's an examination of how two lives became so entangled, so strained, that only the most devastating conclusion seemed possible. And how that conclusion played out not just in the privacy of their home, but on screens across America, turning personal tragedy into public spectacle. Before Jeremy Brown became a headline, before his final moments were immortalized in a video no one should have to see, he was simply a man trying to build a life in Mississippi. Those who knew him described Jeremy with the kind of affection reserved for people who leave impressions without trying. He was a friend you called first, reliable, present, ready with both practical help and easy laughter. Born into a large, close family in Mississippi, Jeremy carried that sense of connection into adulthood. Family gatherings were sacred to him. The noise, the food, the teasing, the love. He moved through life with an easiness that drew people in, a natural charisma that wasn't flashy but felt authentic. When Jeremy smiled, friends say you couldn't help feeling that everything might turn out all right after all. After finishing high school, Jeremy chose stability over adventure. He didn't chase far-off opportunities or reinvent himself in unfamiliar places. Instead, he built his future close to his roots, accepting the responsibilities of adulthood with a straightforward determination. At National Sale and Lease, where he worked his way up to manager, colleagues respected his work ethic and customers appreciated his honesty. Work wasn't just employment for Jeremy. It was identity, purpose, a way to provide for those who depended on him. Outside of work hours, Jeremy's life revolved around simple pleasures that brought him genuine joy. Music filled his car and home, classic R&B tracks and southern hip-hop beats, creating the soundtrack to weekend afternoons. His grill was almost legendary among friends who knew that an invitation to Jeremy's meant good food, cold drinks, and conversation that flowed as easily as the laughter. Fatherhood transformed Jeremy in ways even he might not have expected. Those who saw him with his child noticed the gentle attention, the protective instinct, the pride that softened his expression. Being a father gave Jeremy's life new direction, new meaning. Someone to work for, someone to show up for, someone who needed him to be his best self. In friendships, Jeremy was a definition of dependable. Car trouble at midnight, Jeremy would answer the call. Moving day, he'd be there with his truck before you finished asking. Bad day, he'd show up with food and distraction until things seemed manageable again. His phone buzzed constantly with people seeking his time, his help, his ear. And more often than not, Jeremy gave what was needed. But like anyone, Jeremy had complexities that weren't immediately visible. He carried burdens he rarely discussed, preferred to solve problems quietly rather than voice struggles openly. He had mastered the art of smiling through difficulty, of turning pain into productivity, of keeping certain thoughts private even among those closest to him. To most people in Columbus, Mississippi, Jeremy Brown appeared to be living proof that an ordinary life could still be rich with meaning. A man with a steady job, close relationships, and simple ambitions. What they couldn't see were the complications beneath that surface, the challenges in his marriage, the tensions building behind closed doors. Khadijah Michelle Brown's story begins, like Jeremy's, in Mississippi soil. Before she became known through the lens of tragedy, before strangers debated her actions online, she was a young woman navigating life's complexities with determination and fire. Those who knew Khadijah from childhood remember her distinctive personality. Outspoken, strong-willed, impossible to ignore. She carried that boldness into adulthood, becoming someone who stated her mind clearly and stood her ground firmly, whether others agreed or not. Family was fundamental to Khadijah's identity. She came from a close-knit household where loyalty was expected and given. That foundation shaped her approach to relationships. She loved intensely and expected the same in return. Any perceived betrayal cut deep, leaving wounds that fester rather than heal cleanly. As a mother, Khadijah showed a protective devotion that defined her daily choices. Her child represented everything pure and worth protecting, in a world she often found harsh and disappointing. She prioritized her child's needs above her own, creating stability even when her own life felt anything but stable. Beyond her role as mother, Khadijah harbored ambitions for financial independence and personal growth. She pursued education at different points, taking classes that might open doors to better opportunities. Though her path wasn't linear, interrupted by life's demands and limited resources, She maintained hope for a future with more security and less struggle. On social media, Khadija presented herself without filters or apologies. Her online presence revealed someone comfortable with vulnerability, someone who shared frustrations alongside celebrations. She posted about motherhood challenges, relationship conflicts, daily irritations, and occasional triumphs. This transparent approach earned her both supporters who appreciated her honesty and critics who questioned her judgment. Within her circle, Khadija was known for emotional intensity that could manifest as unwavering support or overwhelming anger. Friends described someone capable of profound kindness one moment and searing confrontation the next, a woman whose emotions ran close to the surface, visible and volcanic when triggered. Control mattered deeply to Khadija, particularly control over her immediate environment and relationships. When life felt chaotic, financially, emotionally, practically, she sought to impose order through whatever means available. This need intensified during periods of stress, creating friction when others didn't respond as she expected or needed. To understand Khadija Michelle Brown requires seeing beyond simplistic labels or judgment. She was a complex woman balancing multiple roles: mother, partner, daughter, individual, while carrying hopes, hurts, and histories that influence her reactions and choices. She was someone striving for stability in unstable circumstances, someone whose capacity for both love and anger ran equally deep. If you appreciate thorough, responsible true crime storytelling that examines cases with depth and context, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're committed to bringing you thoughtful coverage of real events, focusing on the human elements that mainstream reports often overlook. Your support helps us continue this important work. Jeremy and Khadija's relationship began long before marriage certificates and shared addresses. Their connection stretched back to middle school hallways in Mississippi, where they first became aware of each other amid the awkwardness of adolescence. They weren't childhood sweethearts in the storybook sense, but rather two young people whose lives repeatedly intersected until eventually connection became inevitable. Throughout high school, their bond deepened. They shared friend groups, attended the same gatherings, developed the kind of familiarity that comes from growing up alongside someone. Those who knew them during these years recall an ease between them. Jokes exchanged in crowded hallways. Homework helped offer without hesitation. The comfortable recognition of someone whose backstory you already know. For those watching their relationship evolve, Jeremy and Khadija seemed well-matched. They shared cultural references, hometown memories, and understanding of each other's families. Their transition from friendship to romance appeared natural, expected. The logical progression of years spent in each other's orbit. In 2017, they formalized their commitment through marriage. Their wedding wasn't extravagant, but reflected the authenticity they valued. Surrounded by people who had witnessed their journey from teenagers to adults, from classmates to life partners. After marriage came the everyday business of building a shared life. They established routines, celebrated milestones, created traditions that belonged uniquely to them. They faced challenges too: financial pressures, professional setbacks, the adjustments required when two independent people attempt to function as a unit. Parenthood added new dimensions to their relationship: joy and exhaustion, pride and worry, the constant balancing of needs and resources. It strengthened their bond in some ways while testing in others, as is true for most couples navigating profound changes children bring. Friends observed different energies between them. Jeremy typically approached conflict with restraint, preferring to step back when tensions rose. Khadija expressed emotions directly and immediately, believing problems should be addressed rather than avoided. These different communication styles sometimes complemented each other, but often created friction, especially during stressful periods. On social media, their relationship appeared stable, even enviable at times. Photos showed them at family gatherings, on outings with their child, celebrating anniversaries with affectionate captions. These glimpses suggested partnership, mutual support, shared purpose, the public face of a private relationship that few truly understood. What these images couldn't capture were the growing tensions, the recurring arguments, the patterns forming beneath the surface. Every relationship contains multitudes, the visible and invisible, the spoken and unspoken, the moment of connection and disconnection. Jeremy and Khadija's was no exception. It held genuine care alongside mounting frustration, shared dreams alongside diverging needs, loyalty alongside doubt. In those early years, before everything changed, before everything ended, they were simply two people who had chosen each other, who were trying, sometimes succeeding, sometimes failing, to build something meaningful together. Within the walls of their home, Jeremy and Khadijah created traditions and memories that defined their family life before tragedy rewrote everything. Birthday celebrations stood out as particularly significant occasions. Khadijah approached these events with meticulous attention, themed decorations, carefully selected gifts, homemade cakes that took hours to prepare. Jeremy's contributions were different but equally meaningful. The steady presence, the genuine delight in watching their child experience joy, the practical support that made celebrations possible. Summer gatherings showcased their complementary strengths. Jeremy controlled the grill with casual expertise, turning simple ingredients into meals that brought people together. Khadijah curated playlists that kept energy high. Mixed drinks that kept conversations flowing ensured everyone felt welcomed and included. Their home became a natural gathering place, comfortable, unpretentious, alive with music and conversation. Friends knew the door was open, that extra plates would appear at dinner time, that laughter was the most common sound within those walls. Even during tighter financial periods, they maintained this hospitality, believing connection mattered more than perfection. They shared ambitious conversations too, late-night talks about possibilities beyond their current circumstances. Sometimes they discussed entrepreneurial ideas, like a food business combining Jeremy's cooking skills with Khadijah's flair for presentation and promotion. While these ventures remained mostly theoretical, the shared aspiration created common ground during periods when other aspects of their relationship proved challenging. Their anniversary had passed just days before March 25th, 2023, a milestone that would soon be overshadowed by events no one could have predicted. They had marked the occasion simply, quietly, perhaps with no indication that it would be their last celebration together. These memories matter not because they erase what followed, but because they complete the picture. Jeremy and Khadijah's relationship contained genuine connection alongside growing conflict. It included moments of harmony and unity that made the eventual breakdown all the more tragic. The story of their marriage isn't solely defined by its ending, but by its entirety. The aspirations and affection, the tensions and troubles, the ordinary days and extraordinary conclusion. March 25th, 2023, Columbus, Mississippi. Dawn broke over the apartment complex on Green Tree Drive, filtering through blinds and curtains, marking the beginning of what should have been an unremarkable Saturday. Inside the Browns' apartment, however, tension had already displaced sleep. What started as an argument the previous evening had continued through the night, creating an atmosphere thick with unresolved anger and exhaustion. By early morning, the conflict between Khadijah and Jeremy Brown had reached a critical point. Khadijah, perhaps seeking validation or audience, perhaps driven by emotions beyond rational thought, made a decision that would permanently alter multiple lives. She began streaming on Facebook Live. The video opened with Khadijah moving through their apartment, voice raised, directing accusations toward Jeremy about his behavior and character. In the background, another voice, reportedly her mother, could be heard engaging with Khadijah, commenting on Jeremy's perceived failings. The conversation suggested ongoing tensions had reached a breaking point. Jeremy appeared in the frame periodically, phone in hand, apparently trying to contact someone who might help de-escalate the situation. His demeanor contrasted sharply with Khadijah's heightened emotional state. He spoke quietly, repeatedly expressing his desire to simply leave for work and remove himself from the conflict. "Just let me go to work," Jeremy can be heard saying multiple times on recording, his voice revealing growing frustration, but remaining controlled. As viewers would later recall, he seemed focused on creating distance rather than engaging further in the heated exchange. The tension visibly escalated when physical boundaries became an issue. Jeremy repeatedly asked Khadijah to stop touching him, to give him space, to allow him to exit the apartment. His request went unheeded as the confrontation continued to intensify. What happened next occurred approximately 5 minutes into the live stream. A single gunshot, sudden and definitive, followed immediately by screams, the sound of a child crying, and Khadija's voice stating with shocking directness, "Your daddy's dead." The broadcast ended shortly afterward, but by then, hundreds of viewers had witnessed the aftermath of fatal domestic violence in real time. Some immediately contacted authorities. Others shared the video, causing it to spread rapidly across social media platforms before content moderators could intervene. At approximately 7:42 a.m., Loon County Sheriff's deputies responded to the emergency call at Green Tree Drive. Upon arrival, they found Jeremy Brown, 28 years old, deceased from a single gunshot wound. Deputies secured the scene, recovered a 9mm handgun believed to be the murder weapon, and took Khadija Michelle Brown, also 28, into custody without resistance. She was transported to the Loon County Adult Detention Center and charged with murder. Initial reports indicated she would be held without bond pending further legal proceedings. What began as a private dispute had transformed into a public tragedy, one that would soon generate national headlines, traumatize countless viewers, and prompt difficult conversations about domestic violence, social media's role in modern tragedy, and the thin line between private conflict and public spectacle. Beneath the surface of the Browns' relationship lay currents of conflict that occasionally broke into public view, but remained largely hidden from those who knew them casually. According to Sheriff Eddie Hawkins of Loon County, both Jeremy and Khadija had previous encounters with law enforcement related to domestic incidents. These documented episodes suggested a relationship marked by recurring conflicts that occasionally escalated beyond verbal disagreements. Those closer to the couple noted patterns of tension and reconciliation that characterized their interactions over time. While specific statements from friends or family members have not been widely reported, the recurring nature of the disputes points to unresolved issues that fester beneath periods of apparent stability. No public records indicate that either Jeremy or Khadija sought professional help through counseling or intervention services. The absence of formal support structures may have contributed to their inability to address underlying problems effectively, allowing small conflicts to grow into dangerous confrontations. Behavioral patterns observed throughout their relationship included intense arguments followed by periods of reconciliation, accusations of infidelity that surfaced repeatedly, and emotional volatility that seemed to increase over time. Without constructive conflict resolution strategies or external support, these patterns created an environment where minor disagreements could quickly intensify. The tragedy that unfolded on March 25th serves as a somber reminder of how essential it is to recognize and address relationship dysfunction before it escalates beyond repair. It highlights the importance of accessible intervention services and the need for communities to recognize warning signs before violence occurs. The circumstances leading to the events of March 25th, 2023, reveal a complex web of factors that contributed to the fatal confrontation between Jeremy and Khadija Brown. In the early morning hours, around 6 a.m., Khadija began posting on Facebook, sharing accusations about Jeremy that suggested profound distrust and emotional turmoil. One post featured a screenshot of messages between Jeremy and another woman, with Khadija explicitly calling him unfaithful. Shortly thereafter, she published additional posts questioning his sexuality and alleging inappropriate behavior with co-workers. These public accusations indicate deep-seated insecurities and trust issues within the relationship. By making these allegations visible to their social network rather than addressing them privately, Khadija demonstrated a desire to expose perceived wrongdoing, perhaps seeking validation or support from others. Economic pressures likely contributed to the tension between them. While specific details about their financial situation remain private, financial stress commonly exacerbates existing relationship problems, reducing patience and amplifying frustrations over relatively minor issues. The decision to broadcast their argument on Facebook Live suggests psychological factors beyond immediate conflict. This choice to document and share such an intimate and volatile moment indicates potential emotional distress and impaired judgment regarding boundaries and consequences. The presence of Khadija's mother during the incident added another layer of complexity to the situation. Her engagement in the conversation, as heard on the recording, potentially reinforced Khadija's perspective rather than offering calming intervention. Social and community factors must also be considered. Expectations regarding masculinity, fidelity, and relationship roles can significantly impact how individuals respond to relationship challenges, particularly when public perception becomes involved. Accusations concerning infidelity or sexual orientation carry powerful stigma in many communities, potentially intensifying personal humiliation and emotional responses. Understanding these contributing elements provides essential context for comprehending the tragedy, highlighting how multiple pressures and factors can combine to create circumstances where violence becomes a terrible final act in a relationship's deterioration. The investigation into Jeremy Brown's death began immediately after first responders arrived at the scene on Green Tree Drive. Law enforcement secured the apartment, documented the physical evidence, and began the process of piecing together the events that led to the shooting. Investigators collected and cataloged critical evidence from the apartment, including the 9mm handgun used in the shooting, bullet casings, and other relevant items that could help reconstruct the sequence of events. Forensic teams documented the scene thoroughly, creating a detailed record of the physical environment where the tragedy occurred. Perhaps the most unusual aspect of this investigation was the existence of digital evidence capturing the moments leading up to the shooting. The Facebook Live video, which had already been viewed by countless people online, provided investigators with an unfiltered record of the argument's progression and immediate aftermath of the gunshot. While the video did not capture the actual shooting, the audio offered crucial context about the interaction between Jeremy and Khadijah in those final moments. Investigators conducted extensive interviews with witnesses, including individuals present in the apartment at the time of the shooting, neighbors who may have heard the argument or gunshot, and acquaintances familiar with the couple's relationship dynamics. These statements helped establish a timeline of events and provided insight into the couple's history. By the summer of 2023, the initial investigation had concluded and legal proceedings were underway. A Loon County grand jury reviewed the evidence presented by investigators and prosecutors, ultimately returning an indictment against Khadijah Michelle Brown for the murder of her husband, Jeremy Brown. The indictment formalized the charges and moved the case from investigation to prosecution, setting the stage for a trial that would examine not just the facts of March 25th, but the entire history of a relationship that ended in tragedy. As summer faded into fall in 2023, the legal system began processing the case against Khadijah Michelle Brown. The prosecution presented a straightforward case. This was an act of intentional violence. They emphasized the deliberate nature of Khadijah's actions that morning, not just the shooting itself, but the decision to broadcast the confrontation online. Prosecutors introduced clips from a Facebook Live video as evidence, highlighting Jeremy's repeated attempts to disengage from the conflict and leave for work. They drew attention to his clear statements asking not to be touched and his apparent desire to remove himself from the escalating situation rather than participate in it. The prosecution also referenced Khadijah's social media activity immediately preceding the shooting. Her public posts accusing Jeremy of infidelity and questioning his sexuality were characterized as calculated public humiliation, suggesting premeditation rather than spontaneous emotion. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment reaction. One prosecutor stated to the court, "This was a deliberate choice to document, to broadcast, and ultimately to end a human life while others watched." The defense constructed a different narrative, one of emotional breakdown resulting from prolonged relationship stress. Without denying the shooting itself, Khadijah's attorneys portrayed her as a woman pushed beyond psychological limits by perceived betrayal and emotional manipulation. They described the incident as the culmination of ongoing trauma rather than a planned attack. Her legal team emphasized her state of mind, arguing that her judgment was severely impaired by emotional distress, making her unable to fully comprehend or control her actions in that critical moment. "What you're seeing isn't calculated violence," her attorney argued. "You're witnessing the collapse of someone who felt cornered, betrayed, and abandoned by the person she trusted most." Ultimately, faced with substantial evidence, including the video recording and witness statements, Khadijah Brown chose to accept a plea agreement rather than proceed to trial. In May 2024, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, acknowledging responsibility while avoiding the more severe penalties associated with first-degree murder charges. The court sentenced Khadijah Michelle Brown to 40 years in prison. Of this sentence, 34 years will be served in state prison, with the remaining 6 years to be completed under post-release supervision. The sentencing hearing was subdued. No dramatic statements or outbursts, just a solemn pronouncement of consequences that would define the rest of Khadijah's life and formally acknowledge the permanent absence of Jeremy's. For Jeremy's family, the sentence represented acknowledgement of their loss, though no legal outcome could truly provide healing for the absence they now faced. For Khadijah's loved ones, including her child, the sentence marked another form of loss, a mother who would spend decades behind bars, a family forever altered by a single irreversible action. The conclusion of legal proceedings marked only one kind of closure in a story with ripple effects extending far beyond courthouse walls. The death of Jeremy Brown and the imprisonment of Khadijah Brown reverberated throughout Columbus, Mississippi, and beyond, forcing difficult conversations about relationship violence, social media's impact, and community responsibility. In Columbus, the shock was particularly acute. Many residents had known Jeremy personally. The friendly manager who helped customers at National Sale and Lease, the guy who organized weekend cookouts, the father devoted to his child's well-being. Others knew Khadijah as someone passionate and protective, a young mother determined to create stability despite challenges. To reconcile these familiar personas with the tragedy that unfolded on social media created a cognitive dissonance many struggled to process. Local organizations focused on domestic violence prevention used this tragedy to highlight the need for expanded services. Advocates emphasized the importance of recognizing warning signs, supporting individuals in troubled relationships, and ensuring resources were accessible to all community members, particularly in underserved areas. Discussions emerged about how law enforcement responds to domestic disputes, especially in cases where conflicts recur over time. Questions arose about whether earlier interventions might have prevented the fatal escalation, and what systems might better protect vulnerable individuals before violence occurs. The role of social media in amplifying personal crises became a focal point for community reflection. The fact that Jeremy's death was broadcast live online raised uncomfortable questions about digital ethics, about the responsibility of platforms, and about how technology changes the nature of private suffering in the modern age. Both families released statements following the sentencing. Jeremy's relatives expressed profound grief over losing someone described as a heart of family gatherings, a reliable friend, and a father whose absence would leave an unfillable void. Khadijah's family acknowledged the devastation she had caused while also mourning what they described as the loss of the person they had known before that fatal morning, a woman they remembered as caring and hopeful despite her flaws. As time passes, the story of Jeremy and Khadijah Brown remains a cautionary tale about what happens when relationship problems go unaddressed, when emotions overwhelm reason, when help seems unavailable or unacceptable until it's too late. It's a reminder of how quickly lives can change, how permanent some decisions prove to be, and how widely the impact of private tragedies can spread in our connected world. Perhaps the most troubling legacy of this case lies in the questions it leaves unanswered. Who might have intervened? What resources might have helped? How many similar situations are developing right now in homes where tensions build day by day, unnoticed until they become uncontainable? And how do we, as a society, reach those people before private pain becomes public tragedy? Thank you for watching this examination of a case that reminds us all how fragile relationships can be and how essential support systems are for those in crisis. If you found this analysis valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We bring you thoughtful coverage of true events daily, focusing on the human stories behind the headlines. Turn on notifications so you never miss new content as we continue exploring cases that deserve attention and understanding.